to order the meeting of the Caldwell County Department of Social Services. Today is Tuesday, April 26th. It is 5 p.m. and we're here in the out in East Orange County Office Plaza. First thing on our agenda is going to be the Pledge of Allegiance and invocation, and we will let our director, Will Wakefield, lead us in that.
Everybody will stand for our pledge and then our prayer. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let us pray. God, we thank you for this day. We thank you for this time together, and thank you for the work that we are able to do to serve those in this community. I pray for this board and for the business of this day, and I pray for our staff and the work that they do to serve the families that we serve. And we pray for each of these families and the needs that they have and how we can best help them and how we can help those who have lost hope, those who are in need of food and shelter and care, and for those children and adults that need our help and attendance. And we just ask for your guidance in all that we do. In your name I pray. Amen.
Amen. All right. Next on the agenda is there any amendments to our agenda? Okay, no amendments. All right, next I need a motion to approve the minutes from last meeting.
I will make a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries. Next is reports. DSS and Robin's Nest will be Kim Arnett, Children's Services Program and Administrator, and Shelley Boland, Robin's Nest Executive Director. That's a whole lot of words right there. Big, long titles.
Yeah. So good evening. As you said, this is Shelley Bowen. She is the Executive Director at our local Child Advocacy Center, which is the Robin's Nest. And so what we thought we would do today is talk to you about our collaboration and how we respond to mostly abuse, but neglect as well, between our agencies and involving a lot of other community partners. So as you know, April is Child Abuse Prevention Month, so this is a perfect time to talk about those collaborative efforts, and so that's what we're going to do today. So, Shelley came up with this quote from Phil Jackson, and I think it's just perfect to show that, we really are as strong as our teams are, and we need to empower each other and empower the members of our team, and our team is the county. And so I thought that was just a perfect quote for this presentation. So I'll start with, what is the role of the Department of Social Services in child abuse? And so you all know this, but for people who are watching that may not understand, we are mandated through general statute to make a prompt and thorough assessment of any report of abuse, neglect, or dependency if it meets a certain legal threshold. So when we make that prompt and thorough assessment, we are looking at the facts of the case in order to determine whether or not protective services should be provided to this family, or perhaps whether or not we need to involve the court system. And so we've gone through that process, and talked about that process several times. And so it is an extensive process. And so I'm not going to talk about every piece of that, because what I really want to hit on today is how we collaborate in certain situations. So I will very briefly go through the different types of maltreatment that we respond to and that we collaborate with the Robin's Nest about. So neglect is one, that is when a juvenile does not receive proper care, supervision, or discipline. There's a lot of other things that can fall into the neglect category. 80% of our cases are neglect cases, and so that is the majority of what we see. And a lot of what we see is substance abuse, a lot of what we see is violence in front of children. However, this is the least amount of interaction we have with the Robin's Nest. Now, there are cases in which we may refer a family because of a substantiation of neglect, where we have found something indeed has happened to these children that is neglectful. But the majority of what we refer are going to be abuse cases. And so this is going to be the lowest number of referrals in that situation. Like I said, the highest percentage of cases that we are going to refer are abuse cases. And those are physical abuse cases, and those are sexual abuse cases. And so I'm not going to read this verbatim, but when a juvenile is abused by a parent, guardian, caretaker, or custodian, we involve law enforcement in that investigation, and we involve the local child advocacy center in that investigation. And Shelley's going to talk to you about that process more thoroughly in just a few minutes. But when we're talking about abuse, we are really talking about physical injury by other than accidental means. So if someone is driving a car and they're in a car wreck and the child gets injured in the car wreck, if they're not impaired or there's not other types of situations that would be considered maltreatment, that's not necessarily abuse. If it's an accident, if a child falls down and breaks their arm but they were being supervised appropriately, that's not abuse. It's situations that are other than accidental means. Also, there are situations in which a caregiver, custodian, parent can create or allow to be created a substantial or serious risk of physical injury about the environment that they create. And there are other types of situations there that you can see. Human trafficking falls into that. Having a juvenile commit a delinquent act, such as having a child shoplift for a parent, is also a form of abuse. What we get mostly are marks and bruises on children. And so this is something that in the past few years has changed significantly. And I'll talk a little bit about our notifications. I'll talk in a little bit about our notifications to law enforcement when we get these reports. But a lot of times we get reports that come in that say children have bruises. And so what we have to look at are, is this a situation of abuse or is this a situation of improper discipline? And that takes thorough assessments, that takes medical exams, which we utilize the Robin's Nest for, that takes law enforcement investigations. And so we have to determine, is this a situation, is it serious enough to be abuse or is it considered improper discipline? Because of a new law that was passed several years ago, even if it is a small bruise on a child that was caused by a parent, we still have to refer that to law enforcement. So it's now called the misdemeanor reporting law. So anything that could be a misdemeanor, which we don't make that determination, we let law enforcement do that. We just send them everything and they make that determination. So the CAC sees some improper discipline now more than they did, and again, mostly our abuse cases. Child sexual abuse is one of the other major issues where we involve the CAC. Sexual abuse of a child can be a variety of different things. Also, even when we're not involved, and I'll just throw this in there because you'll probably talk about it, we may not be involved in a sexual abuse case because it may not be a parent, caregiver, custodian, or guardian. It may be a neighbor who the child walked over to the neighbor's house. They developed this relationship with a neighbor, and a neighbor does something inappropriate to this child. It may not be our jurisdiction, but it is law enforcement's. And so then law enforcement will involve the Child Advocacy Center. And so the Child Advocacy Center may be involved in more cases of sexual abuse than we actually may be involved in. And that's what that's talking about, reports that are screened out. So reports that may not be within our jurisdiction, we're still going to refer them to law enforcement, and they may utilize the Child Advocacy Center resources. So this is just a brief reminder, when we receive those reports of abuse, neglect, or dependency, how we make those determinations about whether we screen in or screen out a report. If we screen out a report, we take no action other than maybe to refer to law enforcement because it does not meet the statutory definitions, and so therefore we're not legally justified to intervene. If we screen in a report, which means the allegations do meet those statutory definitions, then that is when we assign it to a social worker and we make that referral to the CAC if it is in fact an abuse case or a case in which we might need a medical, such as a improper discipline and there's marks or bruises. And so this is where we talk about notifications. We are also mandated by law and by policy to give notice to the district attorney when we get the report and also when we finish our assessment, and law enforcement as well. And so we do that immediately when we get a report of abuse or when we get a report now of anything that might rise to the level of misdemeanor child abuse. We immediately send that report to law enforcement, whatever jurisdiction that falls within. So mostly if it's the county, just by sheer numbers, they're going to get most of our reports. And we have a very good working relationship with all of our law enforcement partners, and we have, especially with the detectives that are assigned to these particular cases. And so we give immediate notification to these agencies, and then hopefully we start that parallel investigation immediately, sometimes even so much that the officer, the detective, is going out to the home with our social workers. That's what we like to see. Sometimes that doesn't happen because there's just resources and time. But from that point on, we are working in sync with law enforcement and through the CAC, which is where we all coordinate. So this just talks about this, I said we do our referrals, alleging mostly abuse is where those referrals come from, but again, sometimes neglect as well. And so then I'm going to let Shelley talk about what happens when they get those referrals.
All right, well, first of all, I want to thank you for having me do this with you, because we do have a really great working relationship. So again, I'm Shelley Boland. I'm the Executive Director of Robin's Nest. And the first thing I want to tell you just briefly is how CACs came to be, because we are not just a CAC trying to do this all by ourselves. It started by a person named Bud Kramer who was in, I believe, Oklahoma, and he was a district attorney, worked on a case with this girl who was now living with her grandmother. They had gone through the whole process of this abuse case, and they won the case. And so they were just high-fiving and just so happy that they had provided justice for this child. And then the grandmother came up to him and said, great for you, but we were hurt more by the system than we were by the abuser. And so now what do we do? What resources do you have for us? What are you going to do for us? And it really impacted him. And so he started looking at ways that we can do a better job with helping these kids all the way around. And so that's where the CAC model first came. And now there are hundreds of CACs all over the United States, and several in North Carolina as well. So we have to meet certain national accreditation standards, and we also have our state chapter that we have to be in good standing with. So that's just an idea of how we work. We're under regulations, but all of our partner agencies, there's no regulation stating that they have to utilize a CAC. So we are kind of a central hub, and all of the agencies that work with us, our partner agencies, they all do really good work. But when we come together and break the silos down, we do much better work. And that's what all of the data is showing over 20-some years. So we work with law enforcement, guardian ad litem, child and family advocates, forensic interviewers, medical providers, the school system, Department of Juvenile Justice, mental health providers, DSS, and the judicial system, the district attorney's office. So it's a lot of people that all deal with kids in many ways. And they come to this knowing that it makes for a better case for all of us. And so that's what the incentive is, okay? So the first thing we do is forensic interviews. And I'll back up just a little bit and let you know how we receive those referrals. They're always through either law enforcement or Department of Social Services. So there has to be an open case before we receive those. We do get calls from mental health providers, from medical providers from the school system, we always direct them to make a report. I think that's probably the hardest thing for people to wrap their head around, is that we're all mandated reporters, and we need to make those reports first and then let the process go from there. So that after we receive a referral, our advocate then starts the process of scheduling everything. So she'll talk with the investigators, the assessors with DSS, the investigators with law enforcement, medical providers, forensic interviewers, and so forth, to figure out a time when we can bring everyone together at the center. And we try to see these cases within 48 to 72 hours. There are reasons why it goes longer than that. It's on a case-by-case basis, but our goal is to have them in very quickly. With the forensic interviewing, these are highly coordinated so that we can avoid a child having to be interviewed more than one time unless there is a reason to do so. And we talk about that as a team, if there is a reason. We don't just say, hey, I want another interview. We have to meet and discuss the pros and cons. One of the reasons that we do that is because with any of us, when we tell our story, there's things that we forget. And the next time you may, add more or remember things differently, and especially kids' brains are not fully developed. And so we don't want anything that will undermine them or make them feel like they're having to retell their story over and over and re-traumatize them. So those are some of the main reasons. But the purpose of these interviews is to screen for that maltreatment and to gather details in that active disclosure, provide direction for investigation, and again, to limit the number of interviews. Anyone who's involved with the case comes and watches the interview in a separate room through closed circuit. And then the interviewer will come in about 3/4 of the way through to see if there's any other details that he or she may have missed, and directions to go with that interview. The interview is non-leading, non-traumatizing, and we have to follow very strict protocols in our interviews. The next thing that happens is the medical evaluation. We have one of the only child medical evaluation rostered physicians here. She is a PA, and she's rostered through the Child Medical Evaluation Program in Chapel Hill. And that is actually through DHHS. So we work really closely with them in all of those pieces of that. But what she does is a basic head-to-toe physical exam. So she's able to see if there's any evidence of neglect or other maltreatment, physical or sexual abuse. And she does take either photographs of injuries, or she also does testing. We do not do any ouchies, no pokes with needles. We send all of that over to the hospital. So that way we are considered a nice, safe environment for these kids. They don't have anything that's painful here. Nothing is invasive, and no speculums or anything like that. So, and I will tell you, our medical provider is about the sweetest person you will ever see. She's very warm and friendly with the kids, and they can relate to her really well. So one of the most important things that we are able to do is provide mental health services free of charge. All of our services are free of charge, but especially mental health, because if any of you have ever tried to go see a therapist, insurance is a beast to deal with, and copays and deductibles are difficult, and you may be limited. We don't deal with any of that. We provide it free of charge to everyone who comes through our center. And we also use the gold standard in trauma therapy. It's called trauma-focused cognitive behavioral therapy. If they don't rate high enough in the trauma scales for that, then they do EMDR, which is eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. Both of those are evidence-based trauma modalities. So we right now have 2 therapists that are working with us. One is on staff and one is contract. In August, we're getting another one, and I'm really excited about that.
What is that second thing?
EMDR, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. I don't know a whole lot about it, except that it was first developed through therapists who were seeing trauma from the Gulf War, from our veterans. And they found that there was things that they can do. I know there's a light bar, or there's different things that they can hold in their hand. And it's the movements that they do with their eyes while they're doing other things that kind of reprogram those neural pathways to allow them to lower the trauma response to different stimuli.
It's a very interesting treatment.
It
Yeah,
really is.
I've actually seen that on, there was a story on that on like, I don't remember, 60 Minutes or 48 Hours or something about that for the soldiers. I
Got
saw
something
that.
with the bilateral crossing with the brain and stuff, and it's pretty, it's been around for a while. Yeah,
It's fascinating.
Recently grown
in popularity, I would say,
Yeah.
yes.
And I think it will rise up. Right now, trauma-focused cognitive behavioral therapy, or TFCBT for short, is kind of the top. EMDR is kind of rising up, and I think they're going to be on the same plane one of these days, probably not too long, which is awesome because EMDR, you don't have to rate so high on the trauma scale like you do with TFCBT. So,
I just like it because you're not giving them medication, you
Yeah,
know, you're not
and
pumping them full of, you know,
that's it.
SSRIs and all this other stuff that little kids don't need. I like that.
Exactly.
I like
None
that.
of ours do that. So you have to have psychiatry to be able to do that, medical and psychiatry. Ours are psychologists, clinicians, licensed, what's the word I'm looking for? Licensed. Yes. So, you know, we don't deal in that medication side. If they do need, you know, many of them do need some type of medication for mood regulation or so forth, we refer them for that. We don't want to deal with that. So, all right. The other thing about mental health really quickly is we can never make a guarantee for justice in the judicial system, but we can sure try to give them hope and healing, and that's what therapy is so good for. So our case review, this is one of the most important things aside from everything else, and the reason I say that is because before the CAC came along, when all of those different agencies wanted to talk together to work on the same case, they would have to get a court order in order to share information because it's, you know, highly protected information. With the CAC, we have a standing order, an administrative order from a judge that allows us to communicate with each other without having to go through all of that red tape, which means that we can meet, we can discuss the cases, we can determine better ways of not only working on the investigation, but helping the child and making sure that everything that we're doing, we're keeping that child and that family at the forefront, so we're not having the situation that Bud had all those years ago. So this is a very important part. So it's a formal process that enables all of the MDT, which is the multidisciplinary team, to monitor and assess its independent and collective effectiveness so as to ensure the safety and well-being of children and families. It's an extremely important part of the work that we do, and this is why we're here today, is because that's what we do. Every single day we are always working together. We have a wonderful group of law enforcement officers and social workers and school personnel and the DA's office that come together because they really care about the safety and well-being of children. And our multidisciplinary team, the ones that we have to have for our standards are law enforcement, CPS, prosecution, medical, mental health, victim advocacy, and then others at the CAC. But Robin's Nest has chosen to also include juvenile justice, guardian ad litem, and the Caldwell County school system. And it kind of makes sense. Guardian ad litems are, you know, able to advocate for that child. That's what their role is. The school system sees these kids every single day. And so they know exactly what we're dealing with. And we can work together to make sure that kids who are acting out in school after experiencing trauma, if there's an idea with those school counselors or school social workers that there is an issue going on, then they're not disciplining them necessarily. They're reacting to what trauma was causing the behaviors. And all of that really works well with the resiliency training that has been going on in our community to be a resilient community. And pathway to justice, you know, like I said before, there's never a guarantee that we're going to find justice through the judicial system. Our focus is on the mental health and the well-being of that child and that family, but it is something that we want to do. We want to be able to bring perpetrators to justice. We don't want kids to be further victimized by somebody. And so part of our job is working with the judicial system. The prosecutors decide whether someone should be charged, who should be charged, what evidence is presented in court. So that's completely up to the district attorney. But the cool thing is that they come to our multidisciplinary team meetings once a month. They're able to see kind of the process of the investigation from the very beginning until the law enforcement officer turns in the case. And so they're not getting it green. They can also make recommendations, before you turn in that case, make sure that you interview so-and-so, or did you try to do this thing, or did you manage to get this piece of evidence? And that way, by the time that it gets turned in, it's a much better case, and it's better for them, better all the way around. So. All right, are there any questions for us?
I don't have any questions, but I do want to say thanks again for all the work that you do at the Robin's Nest and also at DSS every day to help our kids heal and also to keep them safe. It's a huge task, and I think Caldwell County is very fortunate that we have such strong partnerships and great collaborations among all of the agencies. I don't think that every county has the level of communication and collaboration that we enjoy here. And because we don't have a lot of resources, it's really good that we share them very well. So thank you again for what you do.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think you guys cover the region, right? You're not just Caldwell County,
We only cover Caldwell County.
just Caldwell. I wasn't sure if you covered the region or not, so you're just Caldwell.
Right. The only way we would have anyone at Robin's Nest from outside the county is if there was a conflict,
Okay.
some
Yep.
type of conflict, just
Makes
like it
sense.
is with DSS.
Yep.
Or somebody moves here and the case occurred somewhere
Or
else. those
maybe
type of
the
things.
event happened here, but they live in a county or two over, and so the investigation has to happen
I don't
here.
think we have any surrounding counties that they
Don't have one.
their own CAC now, do we?
Let's see. No, there's,
So they all have their
Not right
own
yet.
version.
Most
It used to be
do.
before we developed our CAC, I think what it was.
We had to take the
developed in
kids to Catawba.
2010.
Yeah, and so we used to have to use other counties.
Well, I can tell you that, and that makes it even better from what I was getting ready to say, is because we are, to Jill's comment, we're awfully blessed that we have you guys here. And see, how do I say this? Every year, throughout the year, as an elected official here in the county, we get asked quite often to make donations or buy tickets or, whatever it is. I mean, it's just, once you get on that list, you can't get off of it. But I always look forward to receiving the phone call from somebody. And if I don't receive the phone call, just like this year, I'll call them and say, "Where's my ticket?"
Yep.
So we are very blessed, and we can't express how thankful we are to have you guys here for what you do. And I hear a lot about through the sheriff's department, obviously through DSS, about you guys. And not only are we blessed to have you here, but we've also got good quality individuals that are employed here, such as yourself and your staff. So. You mentioned something earlier, I think Kim or one of you did mention human trafficking. Is that something we're seeing, or are you seeing any of it?
Yeah, you want to?
We see, I would have to say it's not prevalent. We do not get a lot of reports about human trafficking. When I say we don't get a lot of reports, I think sometimes we have speculation that something is going on, but we don't have the allegation specifically that that's happening. So I wouldn't say it's a large portion.
But are we seeing it? I mean,
We see some. You might have.
is it here,
Yeah, we
is
see
it
it
here in our
numbers.
county?
We see a little bit more than they do because
From
it's
the law
often
enforcement
not,
side.
right,
Correct.
it's often not a caretaker issue.
Correct.
So we see it a little bit more with law enforcement. What the interesting thing is, though, first of all, abuse across the board is underreported, especially sexual abuse.
Correct.
Trafficking is even more underreported, and if you look at the national statistics and the statewide statistics, we should be seeing more. And also where we are kind of in between major cities, we're kind of
And interstate.
yeah.
Yes.
And so we're just not seeing it as much because sometimes they're going right through, or people aren't necessarily reporting, or they don't know exactly what they're seeing, if it's truly trafficking. But it is here. We just need to see more of it, and we also need to have a better response to it.
And the reason I bring it up is exactly the reason that you're talking about, because I was pretty sure it was here, but we don't talk about it.
Yeah.
And people at home that are watching the television, I want to make sure that, they understand that is, it is happening here. And if you do suspect it, that you need to, let somebody know, that you need to pick the phone up and call somebody. Because I was pretty sure that because of, where we're located at, close to some of the larger cities. I mean, they see it it's pretty prevalent there, it's my understanding. And sexual abuse is another thing that I think that, you know, is here. You probably see more of the sexual abuse than you do anything, I would say, correct?
Yes, we do.
And that's, I'm sure you see a lot of that, do you not?
Yes, we do.
Yeah, unfortunately, you see it. So those, to me, those are the two things that stuck out in my mind is when you were talking about the human trafficking and the sexual abuse, is people understanding that it does actually happen here at home. You know,
Yeah.
it could potentially be happening next door and you don't even know it.
Yep,
So
exactly.
keep your eyes open. If it looks suspicious, report it.
Right, and everyone is a mandated reporter, and so if anyone suspects, has reason to suspect that something like that is happening, you know, they call our department, they call our intake line, they make a report, and then it's on us to determine whether or not we screen that in or screen that out. And so, regardless of whether or not someone thinks, oh, that's, you know, that's not gonna be taken, I don't have enough information, you're still mandated to make that report. So you do need to call us and give the information you have, and then we will do what we're mandated to do.
Exactly. You call, let us figure out whether there's anything to it or not.
Right, correct.
But again, thank you for all you do. I know sometimes you don't get the appreciation that you deserve. So we thank you for all you guys are doing here in the county for our
I will
children.
say DSS are the ones who don't get the praise enough. We don't go out into people's homes, they do.
Yep.
And I have mad respect for everything that they do on a daily basis. They do things we never have to do, and so they deserve a lot of credit, and they usually are the ones who get the least.
Yeah, one of these days when we have time outside of a meeting, I'll give you my personal testimony about DSS, how it started to where I am today. So thank you. I'm right there with you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Any more questions? All right.
Okay.
We'll move along. Next update is going to be monthly updates, and the first on the list is our friend who always comes with such exciting news, is our financial report, Mr. Chris Conley.
I appreciate the warm introduction, as always. Our financials for the month of March, revenues or reimbursements received during the month totaled $1,036,851. We ended the month with receivables of about $1.6 million. Expenses for the month totaled $1,146,241. So our county dollar expense for the month came in at $109,390. Looking at year-to-date compared to prior year, expenses are up $884,000. Revenues are down about $149,000. Therefore, our county dollar is up just over $1 million for the year, $1,033,000. But if you'll see the note under the financial highlights, we did have anticipated March revenues of $738,259 that actually did not come in until April the 1st. So had those been received in March, as they should have been, then our county dollar would only be $295,000 more at this point in the year, which is right in line with where we expect to be. So hopefully
Sounds good.
before the end of July, the state gets caught up on reimbursing counties timely. So we receive all of the revenues expected during this year.
Yeah, don't count on that, Chris.
Well, yeah, we've been dealing with it every year.
Yep.
And I've got a soapbox story I could get on that, but we'll save that for another day too.
Yeah, we have I have some soapbox stories too. But the state, bless their hearts, I don't know.
So
It's amazing to me. It's amazing to me, and I'm going to get on the soapbox just a little bit. It's amazing to me, and it goes back to what we talked about maybe in our last meeting or meeting before. They hold us accountable for certain stuff, and it's got to be done on time. It's got to be done, this way, and it's got to be. But there's nobody holding them accountable.
Right.
So that's the frustrating part to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I have shared that to some local legislators, so not that they
Yeah,
probably have
well,
anything
yeah,
to do
I'm
with it.
certainly
but-
thinking nobody in Raleigh cares about my opinion.
No. Nope, they don't. I hate to hurt your feelings, but they really don't. So has anybody got any questions for Chris? As always, my friend, we appreciate what you do, and thank you for all of the hard work you put into keeping up with these financials. I know it's not easy. I'm glad it's you and not me, because it'd be a
Well, it's not just
disaster.
me. There's a lot that goes on behind the scenes.
Yeah, I told, I failed, well, I shouldn't say I failed. My math teacher one time, she said, Donnie, you're not always going to have a calculator with you. I had a calculator with me, so, but math was not one of my strong points, and I can assure you that that's not a job I'd want to have anything to do with.
Well, thank you.
So thank you for all you do.
All right, thank you.
Next will be our director's report, Mr. Will Wakefield.
I will say Chris is almost like a human calculator. You give him some numbers and he is just,
Yeah, Josh Engel
Popping
in
them
our
off.
tax department's the same way. I don't know if y'all have had any experience with him or not, but he's amazing with numbers. It's just,
It's-
he's a
yeah.
genius.
so he is close to that. And I just want to say, again, thank you to Shelley and her staff and Robin's Nest and our, our work together obviously is important, but, it's, the main thing is that we are able to work well together. Our staff are able to communicate, share issues, share concerns. And so we really appreciate that. And so thanks for coming tonight and being a part of our board meeting. I do want to just briefly introduce Brandy Hood. I know I mentioned her last month, and so Brandy is with us tonight. Brandy is our new Economic Services Administrator, and so I think we've been up and running almost 2 months.
March.
She's the girl behind the curtain. We've heard about her,
You've heard about her? Yeah.
but we ain't seen her.
So she is officially here now.
So she really does exist.
She does
We-
exist.
here.
There you go.
And so Brandy's been with us, I think I mentioned last month, she's been with us about 7 years. Has worked in economic services in several areas, and she's already jumped in and getting things running and probably clearing up some of the messes that I created over the past several months. So, and so she'll be popping up here in just a minute, but we're glad to have Brandy in this position. I wanted to mention, we'll be talking a little bit about Older Americans Month, which is in May, but I wanted to bring that up because on May 6th, over at Water Life Church, over out in the parking lot, they're going to let us borrow their parking lot. We are going to have I guess kind of a resource fair for some of our seniors out there. If it's a nice day, then there will be some tables and information, and people can actually get out of their car and walk around. If it's a rainy day, then we're going to use the that large portico there that they have, so folks can actually drive through and kind of stay out of the weather.
What day is that again?
That will be May 6th from 10 to 12. And so we're looking forward to that. Typically this time of year, historically, we've had our big celebration of life. We pull anywhere from 300 to 500 seniors together, do lunch and all those kinds of things. Obviously, with COVID the past couple of years, we've had to put that off, and so we're not quite there yet. One day, we hope to get back to that. But we felt like this would be another good way to do some celebrations for Older Americans Month, and we appreciate Water Life for allowing us to use their parking lot. That gives us a very large space. We did this last year in our parking lot, and it worked well over at the Human Services Building, but it does still tend to get congested over there. So we look forward to that. I also wanted to mention, and we know that we have one board member position that is going to be filled through the state, through the Social Services Commission. We also know that Iris's position Iris will have served, come the end of June, will have served 2 terms, which for our board, you serve 2 3-year terms, and then you have to roll off. And so that is a commissioner position, and so I will be forwarding information to the commissioners so that they can go ahead and be thinking about that. If you have any ideas or of some good prospects for that position, then I'm sure the commissioners would like to hear that, so we'll be getting that information to them so that they can fill that position in June for our next.
So when does her term end?
She will be through June.
Okay, that's what I
Through
thought.
June.
All right.
So we will have 2 new board members for our July meeting
Okay.
for this next year. And we will have some time in the future to.
And we got some applications for a
Yes.
couple of, I know we got a couple anyway, maybe.
We do have
two
a
or
couple
three.
for the Social Services Commission, and so we will look for some others for the commission.
So if y'all have any recommendations that you might know somebody that would help to pass that along.
Yeah. And we'll put that out there of how people can apply for that and get that put out on the county website, those types of things.
So the application would be available for somebody. if they
Yes,
were
because
interested.
that one, that application is different,
than
that's a
the
different
one
appointment
that-
than the Social Services Commission.
Correct.
And those two are, they sound similar and it's easy to get them confused, but Social Services Commission and the Caldwell County Board of Commissioners appointment position. So we'll be looking forward to that, and we'll also look for some time to say thank you to Iris for her time with us. It's passed quickly, has it not?
It has passed quickly.
So we will have a time of recognition.
Time flies when you're having fun.
Appreciation.
And I too have learned a lot by being on the board. It's changed my vision a lot on social services, DSS and social services.
Thank you. That's all I have for the moment, unless you have some questions for me.
I'm good. Anybody else got any questions for Will? All right. Next up is going to be Ms. Kim Arnett again, and with Children's Services and Adult Highlights.
Okay. So I want to talk first about some highlights from our child welfare area. We are still going through our Child and Family Services review, waiting for, we have a couple of cases that have been reviewed by the state, and so we'll be hearing from them soon about any kind of feedback on those cases, and one of those is a in-home case. If you remember, that's when a social worker works intensively with a family to try to eliminate safety concerns that's been identified. And then we also have a case, a foster care or permanency case that has been pulled. And so they'll be talking to us about, things that we did very well, things that, and then areas that we might need to improve. So we're waiting on that to be finished. We're also in the process of looking at our foster and adoptive recruitment processes. A few years ago, well, it's probably been more than a few years ago, we developed a committee, and we came together and we talked about developing an ongoing schedule of recruitment activities. And that worked for a while, and so it's time to revamp that process. And so there's been actually a new supervisor that is now supervising those positions within the agency. So she has, brought some refreshing ideas to the table, and I think she's created a little spark there to do some things differently. And so we met a few weeks ago about some of the ideas that it's Valerie Ackerman and Susan Barnett are the two social workers. You probably recognize those names. They've been with us quite some time. And then Nancy Rogers is the supervisor. So they came together and they brainstormed some ideas, which are great ideas. We're going to be doing things such as T-shirts. Let me start with, we're going to do a branding, which is kind of a logo for our recruitment efforts. Surrounding counties have certain logos. For instance, Burke County has Home for Hearts, and Catawba County has Family Builders. And so we want to come up with a logo so that we can be consistent with our recruitment efforts. And so we're in the process. We've sent out an email to all staff at DSS to have somewhat of a competition about, can you come up with a good logo for us? And if so, you can win a T-shirt. So we've got some good ideas there. We're still gathering, ideas and suggestions, and so that process is ongoing. But once we get that, we're going to be buying some things such as coffee sleeves that we hope to be able to give to some of the businesses around the county, such as Blue Moose or any other kind of coffee, maybe restaurants where they can use that, napkins maybe at the Civic Center that they can use for any kind of gatherings, activities that they have there. We're going to be doing some banners around the agency, around the county. I don't know if you've been in the agency, you've seen our stand-up, pop-up banners that talk, they have their mission statement, some have safe sleep information. We want to do some recruitment advertising on those and maybe put them around in the county in different locations. We want to do things with partnerships with other agencies. We've talked with some of the other departments in the county, but other agencies too, and look at how we could partner with them to do some recruitment. With churches in particular, you were talking about doing a recruitment video. We've actually been talking with one of the professors at Western Carolina University who's going to help us put together a video. And actually, probably, he talked about 12 or 15 different 30-second clips of just testimonials. And, he has all of this experience doing those things. And so he actually wanted to be a foster parent, him and his wife, but said they didn't have the time to dedicate to that. And so he felt led when we reached out to him that this is a way he could contribute. And so he was very anxious to do it. So we talked about playing those videos in churches and having informational pamphlets or informational cards to put around the county and in churches. And so we're really trying to get that word out there that, we are in need across the state for foster homes. And whether it's foster homes for short-term emergency purposes or whether it's foster homes for long-term or even adoptive homes. And so we're trying to get that word out there. Also, in May, it's Foster Parent Appreciation, and so we're also putting together some events for our current foster parents and how we're going to show them the appreciation that they deserve, because they certainly do deserve a lot of appreciation from us. They do a very tough job, one that I could not do. And, a lot of people say, "Oh my gosh, I can't do your job." Well, I couldn't do their job. So, and I hate to call it a job. I couldn't do that. I couldn't be in that role. Let's say that. I couldn't provide that. So we're looking forward to doing some things for them in May. As far as statistics go, for our child welfare area, things were pretty stable over the last couple months. You do see our adoptions. I think we had 0 adoptions in February. So in March, we had 8, which is a pretty high number. We had some turnover in our permanency area, and so we ended up transferring several of our children to our adoptions workers. And so over the next couple months, March, probably April, we're going to see an increase in adoptions because we're able to move some children through permanency in that area. Our foster homes have remained the same. I will just say placement crises are still happening. We're currently just desperate for placement for 3 kiddos that we have, 2 with very significant mental health needs, one who is IDD and has mental health diagnosis, who's been turned down by, I cannot tell you how many places across the state. I mean, we've even called places in Arkansas that specialize with IDD diagnosis, and so we're
Tell us what IDD is.
Intellectually delayed.
Okay.
And so, on top of that, there's mental health issues, and so there's just a lot of need, and so we're struggling because we have, like I said, we have 3 on the brink of having to leave placement, and that leaves us possibly in the lobby or in DSS with these children. And we fight tooth and nail with these providers about, can you please keep them? Are you doing your job in looking for these placements? Are you fulfilling your role? And, we try to hold them accountable, but sometimes that's not always the case. And it's not always the case that there's placements out there.
Who are these providers?
It varies.
Okay.
It really does vary.
Which providers have these 3?
Well,
if you can't say, that's fine.
yeah, I probably shouldn't say.
Okay.
Shouldn't say.
Understand.
They're some are behavioral urgent cares, so they're short term.
Right.
But the problem is, they're meant to be short term, but when you don't have another placement for them to go to, it's either please keep them here or they're going to be on our sofa, or on an air mattress. And we're talking about children who have significant needs that we're not equipped to handle.
And they
Well, I
need
still-
specialized care,
Yes.
and there's, seems that there's a gap.
There's a huge gap.
In the kinds of placements that currently we're seeing kids need.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think we've seen a shift.
Yes, and there's a lot of work groups, there's several work groups at the state level that, they're trying to work on this issue. They've got, we talked about the program that they're starting. I talked about that last month. So there are things that are happening, but, it's just never quick enough. And so,
Right. I still go back to what I asked about a while back, maybe it was last month, when we were talking about this. I still think we need a place, not only for that child, but for our social worker, so they're not in the lobby on the couch.
yeah,
We have great maintenance people here. We have a ton of room over there in that building. I just don't see the reason why we can't create that environment.
we have 4 visitation rooms that we're actually in the process of remodeling, and I've spoke about that a little bit. And so one of those rooms, we're looking at creating more of a, where it can transition from a visitation room to more of a bedroom setting. And, that won't take much. We just have to be able to purchase the furniture and be able to have that, because we can turn it into that, and that's what, like I said, we're in the process of remodeling those right now, so,
Well, I think we-
hopefully that is something that we can do. For the social workers, unfortunately, when they're there, they can't sleep. They're having to, usually we have 2 at
And you
one
have to
time.
have 2, right?
Yeah.
Well, especially with children who have these behavioral issues,
Yeah.
and mental health needs, we're gonna have 2 people there at all times.
Well, they'd be a lot more comfortable in a recliner today watching television than they would sitting at their desk,
Yeah, that's probably true.
That's my thinking. If they gotta do
Then they
that
might fall
job-
asleep, but yeah.
Yeah, well, that's true. If they gotta do that job, let's put them in an environment where they're comfortable. And, because that's a lot to ask from a social worker.
It is a lot to
And I think it's, obviously it helps the child, he feels more, it's more welcoming when you
Right.
have that type of environment, but, and for, as far as furniture, heck, we're in the furniture capital of the world.
You'd be
so
surprised how difficult it is to get donations.
You get it
Because I think
built,
we've called every place in county.
you get it built, I'll get the furniture.
Yeah,
How about that?
because I think we've called every place in county asking,
Yeah.
and so we haven't been unsuccessful in getting donations.
You get it built, I bet you I can find the furniture.
Well, I hit you up on that.
And we use the term lobby euphemistically. We technically don't use the lobby, but we use that to say that, it's a
Well, it's still,
DSS.
it's in there where the green, it's in there where the
intended to be a
green
home.
sofa is, right? The green, sectional.
No,
Oh.
it's actually on our second floor. If
Yeah.
you, I'll show you when you
With
come
the
Okay.
over.
two-way mirrors, right?
Yes, with the
Yeah,
two-way
okay,
mirrors.
with two-way
And
mirrors.
so-
I've seen that, yeah.
Yeah, and
Okay.
so those are it's a kind of a cube or a, what's the word I'm looking, like a quadrant
Yeah.
of rooms.
It's like little living rooms.
Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
little living rooms with
Yeah.
bathrooms and those.
There's a
types of
bathroom, yeah, and so we're,
Yeah.
in the process of getting some things to make it more comfortable, because, because we haven't renovated it in, 12 years?
Well, since the building.
Just the building's been
So,
built.
yeah,
was
we've,
built.
so we're upgrading a little bit, but
Okay.
we'll hit you up on that
Yep, let
about
me
the
know.
furniture.
You just
So-
let me know.
So anyway, those are the highlights in our child welfare area. And so I want to talk a little bit about adult services now. Again, numbers with adult services are remaining pretty much the same as over the last couple of months with, in regards to wards who are in our guardianship and, of course, our reporting as well. I will talk about some funds that we have received as part of the American Rescue Plan. The Division of Aging and Adult Services has allocated a portion of that to provide and arrange for essential needs for adults who are in need of protective services. And what that means is adults who we've received reports about abuse, neglect, or exploitation, and then we have confirmed that that has occurred and they are in need of protection. And so these funds, we received a little over $19,000 in these funds in February of this year, and we are able to provide essential services so that, there are specific things that we can pay for, and so that does limit the use of the funds, as it always does. Just some of the examples are provision of medical care, assistance in personal hygiene, getting appropriate food and clothing, heated and ventilated shelter, and some other types of protection from abuse, neglect, and exploitation. Some of the things that we've been able to do with this money so far is we've provided some medication dispensers for these older adults, and these dispensers are not your typical, weekly medication dispensers. These have alarms, and they pop out the medication that they're supposed to take at a certain time.
Careful, because I use one of those.
Yeah. Well, I said, I think everybody could use one of those.
I'm just kidding.
So,
I wish mine would pop out and remind
yeah,
me.
it has an alarm, and
That's awesome.
it just kind of shoots the medicine out that they need to take right then. So it's
That's really good.
very convenient and I would say effective for people who can't remember what medicine they need to take and when they need to take it. And then also some pest control. We've been able to pay for some pest control
Oh,
for
good. That's really
some
good.
of one of these adults. And I think it's important to note that with this population, there's not a lot of funding out there. We talk about needing funding for more in child welfare, and we talk about how much we could use more funding, but this is an area where we really do not see a lot of funding, and so this is helpful, but again, they always put a lot of guidelines and restrictions on it, so not as helpful, I think, as it could be, but we're glad to have it.
That's really good. All right, thank you.
Yep.
As always, we appreciate you being
Thank
here. Anybody questions before we, okay. All right, next is, what are you hiding back there for? Family Support Services highlights, Miss Brandy Hood.
Hey, good evening.
Good evening.
I just have a couple things to go over. As always, we are going through a couple audits. This month, we are going through our management evaluation audit. That is focusing on food and nutrition benefits, program integrity, and our energy department. We've actually got some feedback from the auditors on that evaluation. We've got that feedback Wednesday, and we have 10 days to kind of review over everything and see any changes that needs to be made or anything we need to rebut at that point. So our staff development quality control team are looking over those cases, along with myself and some of the supervisors, and just making sure that we're following protocol correctly and going through policy as we should. We actually just got, our Medicaid audit has started. It is our RETA audit. For Medicaid, it is a 10-month audit. That audit pulls 20 cases per month, and they will do that for 10 months. It will be 200 cases, and it's amongst all of Medicaid. Even though it does hit family and children's Medicaid a little bit more because that population is a lot larger than the adult Medicaid services, but we got that list Monday, so we have started that. That actually starts May 3rd or May 2nd, Monday. They'll start checking those and sending that stuff back to us, but they do give us a 5-day grace period to look over the cases and add anything that's needed. We can't make any changes, but we can add additional documentation or attachments. So that has started as well. In the month of May, we'll also be going through our single county audit and our child care audit. So we've got several coming back to back.
A lot coming at you.
So,
Yeah.
yes, definitely. And then again, that Medicaid's 10 months, so we'll be getting those cases every month for the remainder of the year. Hopefully with that Medicaid audit, we went through it before, so hopefully this time it goes smoother and that we kind of know what to expect. And we did pretty good last time. We did that in 2019 and things went pretty good, so I'm hoping.
Is that when we had to pay back like $24, Will?
$24.
Yeah.
Yes.
So you're being challenged. You got to beat $24.
I'm thinking we will. A lot of things had changed throughout COVID and all the guidelines and stuff that we were going through, so I'm really hoping that they'll take that into consideration when they're looking at the cases. But the good thing about Medicaid is we are 2 months ahead. We have remained 2 months ahead, as that's the state guideline. So we have remained current with all policy and made sure that we're reacting to everything timely too. So I hope that will help us as well, because that was the biggest thing in the 2019 audit was our timeliness. We weren't 2 months ahead. So
That's one of those things, they hold us accountable, but we can't hold them
that's
accountable.
it. That's exactly it.
I've learned over the years.
To be ahead,
Yeah.
you've got to actually be ahead,
Yeah,
not on
you can't even
time.
be on
That's right, you got to be ahead. That's
we
right,
had
that's a good point, Will. You can't even be on time, you got to be ahead.
Yeah, we had a meeting Tuesday about RETA. That was our first meeting, and they sent us our cases Monday. So they're pretty much, that's the notice, which we knew it was coming, but
Yeah.
that's the notice that we got to prepare our staff on who's looking at those records. That was That was
Well, I'm
it.
sure you
So
guys will do a great job with it.
I hope,
You
I
always
hope
do.
so. They are feeling a little bit more relieved this go round for sure than last. So I'm hoping it ends up pretty good. Just briefly, energy program, the traffic for energy programs has slowed down tremendously. Of course, the crisis intervention program stopped in March, so we still have a lot of funding for our water assistance program. So we've been working with, the county has been working to try to figure out a way to broadcast and advertise that services to the community to see if we can get some more traffic in and assist those clients. So we have worked with we've added it to our Facebook page to maybe broadcast
saw
it
that,
there.
yep.
We also have been meeting with, in our supervisors meeting and management meetings, we've been making sure that we mention that so that all supervisors are mentioning that in their team meetings to make sure these workers are going back and telling their clients about this services if it's something that would be needed. And we've mentioned it to the child welfare side and the adult protective services side to make sure they're doing, they can refer people to that program as well. So hopefully that we'll start getting a little more traffic with that as well. Lastly, we've been working with the county liaison from the state for the Medicaid transformation to try to set up a vendor fair for these prepaid healthcare plans to come to that local agency and set up. I think the liaison's working on trying to get a food truck and a balloon lady for the children, and we're going to start advertising that to our clients as well. And they'll have the prepaid healthcare plans there, and they'll be set up to answer any questions that anybody may have. A broker will be there to guide them to the correct plan if they haven't already picked a plan. So I think that'll be a benefit for the community as well. And I think having the food truck and the
draw
balloon lady,
people in.
it will draw people, and we'll
Yep.
start advertising that too to make
Yeah.
sure we get that out to the community. That's all
Fantastic.
that I have. Do you have any questions?
You did a great job
You
for
did
the
a
first
great
time. You weren't even nervous or anything.
I was.
You can't tell it all. I
No,
was very impressed by
you
it.
hit it and covered it up very well. All right. Anybody got any questions or comments? As always, please take back our appreciation to our staff, to your staff, and tell them how much we appreciate what they do. We don't see them as much as we'd like to, but we know they're there, and we know they're doing a great job, so please make sure we appreciate them. And Shelley, thank you again for coming. It's an honor to have you here. All right, with that being said, our next board meeting will be Tuesday, May 31st, here at 5 p.m. at the Alden East Orange Building. And with that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion that we adjourn.
Second.
Got a motion and a second? All in favor? Please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? We are adjourned.